She came ready to provoke him, but Barack Obama didn't take the bait. He smiled, waited, and then spoke. And in that single moment, calm took the stage and never left. It began like any other television debate. Polite smiles, warm greetings, and the usual talk about how good it is to be here. But that calm didn't last long. Everyone watching could sense that something bigger was waiting to unfold. The stage looked perfect. The lights were bright but soft, casting a golden glow across the table where Barack Obama and Ivanka Trump sat opposite each other. Between them sat the moderator, known for keeping peace when conversations got heated. The topic for the evening was leadership in modern America, simple yet loaded. Obama looked calm just as people remembered him. Composed posture, gentle smile, eyes full of patience. He had that quiet confidence that came from years of facing pressure. He didn't need to prove anything. His presence alone carried weight. Ivanka, on the other hand, appeared polished and confident. Her hair perfectly done, her tone smooth but deliberate. She carried herself like someone who had practiced her lines but believed in them, too. For her, this wasn't just another debate. It was a chance to defend her family's image and her father's legacy as president. The moderator began with small talk. Obama laughed softly at a joke about how he seemed to age slower than most presidents. Ivanka smiled politely, adding that her father often said the job kept him energized, not tired. It was all light and pleasant at first, the kind of talk that keeps audiences relaxed before the real conversation begins. But beneath those smiles, there was an invisible tension. You could sense it in the pauses, the way their eyes met for a second too long. There was history in that room. Political rivalry, pride, and two very different views of what power truly meant. The moderator turned to Obama first. "Mr. President," he began, "you've spoken many times about the importance of character in leadership. What does that mean to you?" Obama gave a small nod, thinking for a moment before speaking. His tone was gentle yet firm. "I think character is what you do when no one's watching. It's how you treat people who can't give you anything in return." The audience nodded, some clapping lightly. Ivanka listened, smiling with that practiced grace, waiting for her turn to respond. The moderator turned to her next. "Miss Trump, you've often said your father taught you leadership through action. How would you describe his approach?" Ivanka's smile widened. "My father believes in results," she said proudly. "He believes real leadership isn't about long speeches or perfect words. It's about taking bold steps even when people don't understand you." The words hung in the air, clearly aimed at Obama's calm and thoughtful style of governing. Obama didn't react. He kept his eyes on her, listening, his face unreadable. The moderator sensed the comparison and leaned in a bit. "So you're saying that leadership is about taking action, even if it means being misunderstood?" Ivanka nodded. "Exactly. Some leaders spend more time talking about unity than actually building it. My father doesn't wait for everyone to agree before doing what he believes is right." A quiet murmur ran through the audience. The air thickened slightly. Ivanka had chosen her words carefully, but everyone knew what she was implying. Obama smiled politely. "That's one way to look at it," he said softly, but he didn't add more. The moderator chuckled awkwardly, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, it's nice to have both perspectives here tonight," but the tension was already growing. Ivanka leaned back, crossing her legs, glancing briefly at Obama with a smirk that could have meant anything. Confidence, amusement, or challenge. She was ready to go further. The next question hit closer to home. "What do you think, Miss Trump?" the moderator asked. "Is the biggest difference between your father's leadership and President Obama's?" Ivanka's smile turned sharp. "I think my father leads from the front. He doesn't hide behind words. Some people build legacies through speeches and memoirs while others build them through action." That line changed the mood instantly. It wasn't just a political statement, and it was personal. The audience gasped softly, realizing she had just taken a direct jab at Obama's post-presidential life, implying that his accomplishments were all talk and no real action. Obama didn't flinch. He simply tilted his head slightly, looking at her with calm curiosity, almost as if he was giving her a chance to go on. Ivanka mistook his silence for hesitation. She continued, "It's easy to sound wise when you're not the one making the tough calls anymore. My father doesn't have that luxury. He faces them every single day." The audience went completely quiet. Even the moderator seemed unsure whether to step in. For a few seconds, it looked like Ivanka had won that moment. Her expression said it all. Confident, certain, proud. Obama remained still. No reaction, no rebuttal. He simply looked at her, hands clasped loosely in front of him. Those few seconds of silence felt longer than they were. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for him to say something, anything. But he didn't. Not yet. He simply smiled, a calm, knowing smile that hinted he was saving his response for the right moment. The kind of smile that said, "You think you've cornered me, but you've only given me the key. The audience didn't know it yet, but that quiet patience was the calm before the storm. Obama wasn't ignoring the insult. He was setting the stage. And when he finally chose to speak, he would turn the entire conversation upside down. The tension in the studio grew like a quiet storm. What had begun as a calm and respectful conversation was now heavy with unspoken challenge. Ivanka had made her point about action over words, and she knew it had landed. The corners of her lips lifted slightly, the kind of smile that hides both confidence and calculation. She wasn't finished. Not yet. The moderator, sensing a spark but not a flame, turned to Obama again. Mr. President, how do you respond to that idea that some leaders talk about change while others make it happen? Obama gave a small, measured breath, his hands rested loosely together, his voice steady. Change, he said softly, doesn't always look loud or dramatic when it's real. Sometimes it happens quietly when no one's watching in classrooms, hospitals, or small towns. Leadership isn't just what you do for people who agree with you. It's what you do for those who don't. The audience nodded. But before the mood could soften, Ivanka jumped back in. She wasn't going to let the moment slip away. With all due respect, she said, her tone calm but edged with something sharper. That sounds nice. But people don't live off words, they live off results. My father built things. Real things. Businesses, jobs, opportunity. He didn't just inspire hope. He created it. The moderator looked at her, then at Obama, unsure if this was drifting too far into confrontation. Obama gave no reaction. His stillness made the air feel even tighter. Ivanka mistook his silence for weakness, for hesitation, and that was when she decided to push further. She crossed one leg over the other and looked straight at him. You know, she said, some people say leadership is about grace, but grace doesn't pay the bills. Maybe that's why so many people felt left behind during your time in office. You spoke beautifully, but where was the real change? The audience murmured. That line hit hard. It wasn't just a policy criticism, it was personal. She was attacking his reputation, his legacy, even his connection with ordinary people. She was daring him to respond. Obama stayed quiet, his eyes fixed on her, expression unreadable. For a brief second, the silence almost made it look like she'd struck a nerve. Ivanka, sensing an advantage, pressed on. You know, Mr. President, it's easy to look calm and wise when you're out of the spotlight, when you're not the one making the tough calls. My father doesn't get that luxury. He doesn't get to just talk about hope. He has to deliver it. Her words were sharp but smooth, wrapped in a tone that pretended respect while cutting deep underneath. She turned toward the moderator with a proud smile as if to say, I've won this round. The moderator gave a nervous chuckle. Strong points from both sides, he said, trying to soften the moment. But no one was listening to him. All eyes were on Obama. Everyone wanted to see how he would respond. He didn't. Not right away. He looked thoughtful, almost amused, like a teacher who just heard a confident student make a mistake in class. He adjusted slightly in his seat, still calm, still composed. He didn't rush his words. He was choosing them carefully, waiting for silence to do the work for him. Ivanka noticed, and for the first time a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. The silence was lasting too long. The smile she wore began to look more like a mask than confidence. She wasn't used to being met with stillness. She was used to quick rebuttals, fast exchanges. Obama's quiet made her words echo back at her, heavier than when she'd spoken them. Finally, he leaned forward slightly and said in a low, even voice, Ivanka, you mentioned results. You're right. Results matter, but what kind of results are we talking about? His tone was calm, but there was steel in it. A leader can build towers, open offices, make profits, but if those results only serve a few, is that leadership or just self-interest dressed up as achievement? Ivanka tried to respond, but Obama didn't stop there. You said your father built things. That's true. But real leadership isn't about building things for yourself. It's about building trust. That's something money can't buy. The audience clapped softly. Ivanka's smile faltered. Obama's words were smooth, unhurried, but each one carried precision like a slow blade cutting through noise. Then he paused again, giving her space, just enough to think she could recover. She straightened up, tilting her head slightly, and replied, with respect, Mr. President, maybe people are tired of moral lectures. They want action. My father acts. That's why people love him. Obama smiled faintly, almost kindly. And that's why they fear him too, he said softly. That single line shifted the air in the room. Ivanka blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected reply. Obama didn't sound angry or emotional, just factual. His calm tone made the words hit harder. Ivanka tried to laugh it off, but her voice came out thinner than before. I wouldn't say fear, I'd say respect. Obama nodded slowly. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference when power becomes the only goal. The audience murmured again, the energy shifting toward him. Ivanka opened her mouth to speak but found no words that wouldn't sound defensive. For the first time, her confidence slipped. She looked toward the moderator, but he was watching Obama now, as if he too wanted to see where this was going. Obama didn't press further. He leaned back and said quietly, "I understand loyalty. I respect family. But when your loyalty stops you from telling the truth, even to your own, that's not strength. That's surrender." The room fell silent. It wasn't the silence of confusion or boredom. It was the silence of realization. Ivanka's earlier jab now felt small compared to what he had just said. Obama didn't smile or gloat. He just looked at her with calm empathy, as if he wanted her to understand rather than feel embarrassed. But Ivanka's composure had cracked, and though no one said it aloud, everyone watching knew. This debate had just shifted in his favor. The storm she had started was beginning to turn back toward her. The air in the studio felt thick, almost heavy. The soft hum of the lights above was the only sound filling the long pause between Ivanka and Obama. She had been confident, sure of her ground, but now the silence was stretching further than she had expected. The stillness of the man sitting across from her was unnerving. Obama didn't look angry or insulted. He just looked patient, and that patience was more unsettling than any outburst could have been. Ivanka shifted slightly, adjusting the cuff of her sleeve, trying to regain that smooth composure she always carried in public. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that said, "I'm still in control." But deep down she could feel it, that slow, creeping sense that the room was slipping away from her. The moderator, hoping to move things along, spoke carefully. "Let's bring this back to leadership," he said. "Both of you have spoken about strength and results, but how do personal values shape those results? Can family influence the way a leader makes decisions?" Ivanka took that as her cue. Her posture straightened, and she quickly found her voice again. "Of course, family shapes leadership," she said with conviction. "My father is the best example of that. Everything he does, every choice he makes is for his family and for the country he loves. He's guided by loyalty to his people, to us, and to his own beliefs. That's what makes him a strong leader." She glanced at Obama as she spoke, almost daring him to challenge her. But he didn't, not yet. She continued, "It's something I've always admired about him. He doesn't separate the personal from the political. His family is his foundation, his motivation." That line, she thought, sounded good, rehearsed, but powerful. She expected applause or at least a nod of respect. But instead, Obama looked down for a moment, almost as if considering something quietly. When he looked up again, his eyes met hers. And there was something different there, a calm that carried weight. "Family is important," he said softly. "It shapes who we are. I understand that." Ivanka smiled slightly, taking it as agreement. "Exactly," she said quickly. "Family gives purpose to everything we do." Obama's next words, however, changed the entire mood of the room. He leaned in slightly and asked almost too casually, "Barron is your son?" It wasn't loud. It wasn't harsh. It was quiet. But it landed with a force that could be felt through every corner of the room. Ivanka's smile froze. The audience went completely still. Even the moderator seemed unsure if he had heard correctly. The silence that followed was sharp, uncomfortable, like a wire pulled too tight. Ivanka blinked, confused for a split second before letting out a soft, awkward laugh. "Excuse me," she said, her voice just a touch higher than before. Obama didn't repeat the question. He just looked at her, his expression calm but unreadable. She quickly recovered, brushing off the moment with a practiced grace. "No," she said, still smiling, though her tone was thinner now. "Barron is my brother. I think everyone knows that." Obama nodded slightly, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Of course," he said quietly. "It's just you talk about family as though it's one single shield that covers everyone around your father. I was only wondering where that shield stops." Ivanka tried to respond, but the words caught in her throat. She felt a strange heat rise in her chest, part irritation, part confusion. She wasn't used to being caught off guard like this. "Trying to regain control," she said. "When you grow up in a family like mine, loyalty is everything. You don't separate who you are from who you love. That's what keeps you strong." Obama smiled again, a knowing smile this time. "I can respect loyalty," he said. "But when loyalty starts to replace truth, it becomes something else entirely." The audience murmured softly. Ivanka's face tightened. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Mr. President." "I'm not implying," Obama said calmly. "Just observing." He paused, letting his words settle. "Your father once said something in an interview. Something about how close he was to you. Many people found it unusual. But I'm sure he meant no harm." Ivanka's face stiffened. She opened her mouth to answer, but the words didn't come out. Obama's voice had remained perfectly even, respectful even, yet the meaning beneath it was clear. He wasn't attacking her directly. He was shining a light on the uncomfortable space between pride and denial. the things said and unsaid within her own family that had always followed her in whispers. She forced another laugh, but this time it didn't sound real. "I don't think that's relevant here," she said quickly, looking to the moderator. "We're here to talk about leadership, not personal jokes taken out of context." Obama nodded, his tone still gentle. "Of course," he said. "But isn't it interesting how the personal and the political always find their way back together, especially when we insist they shouldn't?" That line hit harder than any direct insult could. It was polite, even kind on the surface, but it left Ivanka no room to breathe. She had built her argument on family pride, and Obama had just turned that foundation into a question of boundaries and truth. The room stayed quiet. Cameras rolled. Every face in the audience was locked on her, waiting for her next move. Ivanka took a deep breath. "My father loves his family. That's not something I'll ever apologize for." Obama nodded again, his expression still calm. "Love is never something to apologize for," he said softly. "But sometimes love makes people blind. And when that blindness affects a whole nation, then it stops being love. It becomes something else." There was a stillness after that, a long, heavy silence that seemed to press on everyone at once. Ivanka looked down briefly, then up again, her face composed, but pale. She wanted to answer him. She wanted to say something clever, something to turn the moment back in her favor. But for once, her voice wouldn't cooperate. Obama sat back, saying nothing more. The question still lingered in the air like a ghost. "Barron, is your son?" echoing with a meaning far deeper than the words themselves. And in that silence, it was clear to everyone watching. The balance had shifted completely. The silence that followed was like a long exhale that never ended. No one spoke, no one coughed, no one dared to move. The weight of Obama's question, "Barron is your son?" still hung in the air, twisting itself around every mind in the room. Ivanka could feel every heartbeat echo inside her chest. Her practiced confidence, the polished calm she wore like armor, had cracked. She tried to fill the silence with a smile, the kind that once softened tense meetings or awkward interviews. But now the smile looked brittle. Her mind raced for a way out. She had faced criticism before. Harsh interviews, political scandals, gossip columns, but this was different. Obama's words hadn't been cruel. They were worse than cruel. They were quiet, and quiet words, when timed perfectly, had the power to shatter everything. The moderator's eyes darted between them, but he didn't speak either. Even he seemed trapped in the gravity of the moment. Cameras continued to roll, capturing every flicker of emotion that crossed Ivanka's face. Confusion, frustration, and that faint trace of fear that comes when you realize the power of silence. Obama didn't move. He didn't lean forward or back. He simply waited. He had learned long ago that silence could do what arguments couldn't. Reveal truth without saying another word. The 31 seconds dragged on. Each second felt like a full minute. Ivanka opened her mouth once, but no sound came. She shut it again, swallowing hard. The confidence that had filled her voice earlier now felt forced somewhere deep down, locked behind uncertainty. Finally, she managed to speak. "I think," she began, pausing for breath. "I think what I meant earlier was that family gives leaders their purpose. It reminds them who they are fighting for." Her voice trembled slightly on the last word. She knew it, and so did everyone listening. The calm rhythm she was famous for had vanished. Obama nodded gently as if acknowledging her effort. Then, in that same quiet tone that made people lean in to hear him, he said, "Purpose is good, but purpose without responsibility can be dangerous. It makes people believe they're right simply because they mean well." Ivanka blinked, her face stiffening. "I don't think that's what's happening here," she replied, trying to find her footing again. "Maybe not," Obama said. "But that's the risk when power and family become the same thing. You start protecting your name more than your nation." That single sentence hit harder than the question before. There was no anger in it, no accusation, just truth delivered so plainly it couldn't be ignored. Ivanka's hands clenched on her lap. She wanted to defend herself, to remind him that she had built her own name, her own career, her own achievements. But everything she thought of sounded defensive, small or scripted, and the one thing she knew she couldn't afford at that moment was to sound rehearsed. She tried to smile again, but her voice betrayed her frustration. "I think my father's record speaks for itself," she said quickly. Obama nodded. "It does," he agreed. "That's why people are still speaking about it." The audience reacted quietly. A few soft laughs, not cruel ones, but the kind that broke the tension just enough for people to breathe again. Ivanka, however, didn't laugh. She pressed her lips together, realizing that every response she gave was being turned back toward her. Every defense made her look smaller. And then, unexpectedly, Obama softened his tone. "You know, Ivanka," he said, "being in that spotlight isn't easy. People expect you to defend the people you love. I understand that. But sometimes loving someone means having the courage to question them. That line shifted something in the room. It wasn't harsh. It was human. It felt like advice, not a strike. Yet, that gentleness made it sting even more because it wasn't just about her father anymore. It was about her. Ivanka's eyes flickered down for a moment, the first sign of real unease. She wanted to say something strong, something memorable, but her thoughts tangled. Every phrase that came to mind felt like walking deeper into quicksand. The moderator finally tried to step in, speaking with a nervous laugh. "Well, that's certainly a lot to think about," he said. "Maybe we should move to the next topic." But before he could redirect the discussion, Obama spoke again, calmly but firmly. "No, I think this is the topic. Leadership isn't a collection of slogans or buildings or profits. It's the reflection of your choices when no one can stop you. And sometimes family makes it hard to see those choices clearly." Ivanka sat still, the weight of those words settling over her. Her earlier energy was gone. All she could do was breathe through the silence that followed, knowing that anything she said now would sound like an excuse. Then came the longest quiet of all. It lasted only a half-minute, but it felt endless. 31 seconds of nothing. No applause, no laughter, no debate, just silence. Pure uneasy silence. And in that silence, everyone watching in the audience and at home saw something shift. It wasn't just about a question anymore. It was about truth. Obama had managed to do something rare. He had turned an argument into a mirror. And Ivanka, for all her poise and discipline, had no choice but to see her reflection in it. At last, she let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. "Well," she said softly, almost to herself, "I suppose everyone has their own definition of leadership." Obama smiled gently. "They do," he said, "but only one of them stands the test of time." The crowd began to clap slowly at first, then louder, the sound growing like a wave. Ivanka looked down, then up again, forcing a polite smile as the applause filled the room. She didn't argue anymore. She didn't interrupt because deep down she knew that 31 seconds of silence had spoken louder than anything she could have said. And as the applause echoed, she realized the truth of it, that sometimes silence isn't just the end of a debate. It's the sound of someone losing it. When the applause faded, what remained was a strange kind of stillness. Not the tense silence from before, but something softer, like the air after a storm has passed. Ivanka sat there, perfectly composed on the outside, yet the calm felt rehearsed, fragile, as if a single wrong word could make it fall apart again. The cameras were still rolling, the moderator's voice trying to move things along, but everyone's eyes remained on her. The conversation had shifted. The energy had changed, and there was no denying who held the room. Now, Barack Obama hadn't raised his voice once, hadn't insulted her, hadn't even interrupted her, but somehow he had taken complete control. Ivanka smiled, that polished, professional smile she had perfected over years in front of cameras. "I think I've said all I needed to say," she murmured, her tone light, but careful. She adjusted the papers on the table that didn't really need adjusting, then stood up. The moderator blinked unsure. "Are you, leaving us, Miss Trump?" he asked. She nodded slightly. "I have another engagement to attend," she said. Though everyone in the room knew that wasn't true. The truth was written all over her in the way her shoulders were too stiff and how her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She wanted to leave before another question came her way. Before another sentence could unravel her defenses, Obama didn't stop her. He simply nodded, a gesture of acknowledgement, not victory. "Thank you for your thoughts, Ivanka," he said, his voice calm and even. She gave him a brief nod in return, almost mechanical, then turned to walk off stage. The echo of her heels clicking against the floor was the only sound for a few seconds. Every step she took carried the weight of pride, embarrassment, and something deeper. The quiet understanding that she had been outmatched, not by aggression, but by grace. As she disappeared behind the curtain, Obama leaned back in his chair, exhaling softly. The moderator, relieved to have the focus shift, turned to him. "Well," he said with a half-smile. "That was quite an exchange." Obama chuckled lightly. "Just a conversation," he replied. "Though sometimes conversations tell us more than we expect." The audience laughed, the tension easing. But underneath that laughter, there was something else, respect. People could feel that they had just witnessed something that wasn't about politics or winning points. It was about control, composure, and truth. Obama straightened, his voice calm yet commanding. "You know," he said, "we all say we want truth, but the truth has this funny way of making people uncomfortable, especially when it comes too close to home. The hardest thing isn't hearing the truth. It's admitting when it's staring you in the face." The moderator nodded. "That's a strong point," he said softly. Obama continued, "Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions, even when those questions make people uneasy. Especially then." The audience listened in silence. His words weren't rehearsed or dramatic. They flowed naturally, yet each sentence landed with precision. He paused, looking thoughtful. When power is treated like a family heirloom, it stops serving the people and starts protecting itself. That's when nations lose their way. And the truth, he said, looking up at the crowd, always finds a way to bring them back. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't even directed at anyone by name. But everyone knew who he meant. And more importantly, everyone understood why he said it. The moderator, trying to bring some levity back, smiled. "You always have a way of ending things on a powerful note," he said. Obama smiled back, a small knowing smile. "I just believe words should leave people thinking, not arguing." The audience clapped again, louder this time, not because of a clever comeback, but because of the truth behind his calmness. It wasn't victory through humiliation. It was victory through restraint. Backstage, Ivanka stood in front of a mirror, touching up her makeup with hands that weren't quite steady. Her reflection looked back at her, polished, flawless, and utterly exhausted. She had faced tougher interviews, sharper critics, but never someone who disarmed her without raising his tone. Obama hadn't cornered her with facts or accusations. He had simply held up a mirror and made her see what she didn't want to. For the first time in a long while, she didn't have a ready line, a clever spin, or a talking point to lean on. The quiet truth of that moment, those 31 seconds that refused to fade, kept replaying in her mind. Back on stage, Obama stood, shook hands with the moderator, and thanked the audience. As he walked off, the applause followed him. Not the wild, cheering kind, but the respectful, lingering one. The kind that means people aren't just reacting, they're reflecting. He passed through the same curtain Ivanka had vanished behind, the sound of the crowd still humming faintly. Someone backstage congratulated him on the discussion. He just smiled and said, "It's not about winning, it's about clarity." Outside, the night air was cool. Cameras flashed as he exited the building. But he didn't look their way. His thoughts weren't on the debate or the headlines that might follow. He was thinking about something he once told a group of young leaders. If you have to raise your voice to make your point, maybe your point isn't strong enough. That night, he had proven it once again. Ivanka's departure had said everything words couldn't. Her silence, her exit, her carefully chosen smile, all of it told the story of what happens when confidence meets conviction and fails to hold its ground. The debate was over, but the echo of it, that single question, "Baron, is your son?" would linger far longer than anyone expected. And in that echo, Obama's calm voice would always remain, reminding everyone who heard it that real power isn't about dominance. It's about dignity.